Hi, welcome to Hot Mom's Dinner Club. Today we're working on Ben 4. Meal 1 is going to be hamburger steaks with mashed potatoes and corn. Meal 2, smoked sausage hoagies served with 7-layer salad and potato chips. Meal 3, baked chicken legs rubbed in barbecue sauce served with baked beans and cauliflower with cheese sauce. And last but not least, Swedish meatballs, one of my favorites, Swedish meatballs, served with the rest of the 7-layer salad and some garlic bread. Let's get cooking, all right? First of all, we're gonna start with the hamburger steaks. We're starting with 2.5 pounds of ground beef. This is going to make the hamburger steaks and the Swedish meatballs, okay? The recipe is enough for both. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll out a portion of it for the hamburger steaks, and then the smaller meatballs, we're gonna bake everything at once, and we're gonna reserve our meatballs for meal 4 in this bin, all right? Something I like to do is, you know, you can buy breadcrumbs at the store for very little to nothing. This is about conserving what we're using. You know, so many of us buy a loaf of bread, we don't wanna eat the hills, we just throw them away. Put out too much bread for dinner, too many dinner rolls, too much toasted bread, nobody eats it. You know, if it's untouched and if it's clean, or if they're just heels, throw them in a baggie, throw them in your freezer, you can make breadcrumbs with them. So for this recipe, I pulled out my frozen bread supply. I toasted it off in an oven. You want to toast it off at a rather low oven, about 250 or so. You can also even just toast it for about 20-30 minutes and then just turn off the oven. That'll continue to dry out the bread because you do want it to be dry, because you do want it to be able to crumble into breadcrumbs. Just pop them in the food processor, you just grind them up real fine, and you have homemade breadcrumbs. Like I said, it doesn't save you a whole lot of money, but it's better than just throwing something away. Now, if you don't have any frozen bread, just use your Italian breadcrumbs. Or if you don't have enough, you can always just start with this and then add in your store-bought ones to supplement whatever you're shy of, okay? I'm just using the same food processor. Anyway, just rough chop it. It doesn't have to be pretty. You're getting ready to grind it up into minced pieces. Couple cloves of garlic there. Now, if you don't have a food processor, you can just dice this up really small. Pureeing it just leaves a nice smooth meatloaf, and then people don't see bits and pieces of onions and celery. Kids that don't like onion or celery aren't freaked out. Anyway, also, if you don't have a food processor, obviously you'll have to buy the store-bought breadcrumbs. And you can buy store-bought breadcrumbs. You don't have to use the Italian breadcrumbs that are, you know, that's pulverized into smithereens. So now we're going to run this through the food processor until it is super, super small pieces. I also saved the scraps from my onion and the celery and the garlic too, to save for stock one day. See how smooth that is? The onion and the celery and the garlic. I've got my eggs here. I've got my salt, pepper, and Italian seasoning. Remember, I use kosher salt in my recipe. So it's a lot different than the iodized salt, okay? And then also I've got our homemade breadcrumbs here. All right, so we have our base made for our hamburger steaks and our meatballs. So the next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna start cubing up our potatoes. Okay, so the first thing you wanna do is make sure you wash them in some warm water to loosen up any dirt and soil that may be on them. Don't peel them if you don't have to. If your family doesn't mind it, don't peel them. It'll save you a lot of time. Plus, it'll give you some extra vitamins and minerals that are actually on the peel of the potato. So anytime you can get by without peeling them, don't peel them. You don't want to get them too small. You want them to cook in a fairly good amount of time so that they don't absorb so much water. If you get them too small, they may absorb too much water, and then that way you can't put in the good flavorings that you want to add, like the half and half, the butter, the salt and pepper that we're going to put into these. So once we get them all peeled, we're going to get them on the stove. I've got my base made. So now we shall start rolling out our hamburger steaks and our meatballs. I've got parchment paper. I sprayed it first, laid out the parchment paper, it keeps it in place. A little bit more spray. This will make your cleanup a lot easier. Okay, so the hamburger steaks. You also, you know your family, you might want to make different sizes, but we want to get 4 hamburger steaks, and then the rest we're going to roll into meatballs. I'm thinking I'm gonna do kind of like a medium-sized meatball and try to do 4 per person. So we're wanting to get 4 hamburger steaks and 16 meatballs. I do have a scoop. I'm gonna layer it up heavy for the hamburger steaks. And then for my meatballs, I'll probably just scoop it level and then just tear it in half, and that'll be my meatballs. So I'm gonna get working on all of this. So our hamburger steaks and our meatballs just came out of the oven. You can use a thermometer to check these with. 155 is what the temp needs to be on them. Also, you can always, push on them. And if they push back, that means that they're done. Put the hamburger steaks in here. And these will be for this evening. And then the meatballs, I'm just gonna pop over here and let them cool down. I will freeze what I'm not gonna use and just save the rest for whatever we're gonna use for meal 4, the Swedish meatballs. So with one recipe, you can have several outcomes. You can make a meatloaf, you can make hamburger steaks, you can make meatballs. So it's very versatile, so remember this one. All right, so our potatoes are done. They're nice, hot and steamy. I drained out all the water. Now we're gonna season them up. We wanna put salt and pepper in there. I'm going to put some butter in, some of our half and half. If you have a mixer, you can also use a KitchenAid or just hand smash them. Oh, those are good. All right, you can always give them a taste test before you serve them. Add more butter, salt, pepper, whatever you think they need. All right, so we got the hoagie rolls for the meal 2, for the smoked sausage hoagies. What we're going to do is cut this in half. 1 hoagie, because we got to save 4 for the sausage hoagies, and then we're going to use 1 piece for this meal and another piece for the Swedish meatball meal. We're going to pop that in the oven. All right, so here we have meal 1. We have our hamburger steaks with barbecue sauce. We did the mashed potatoes, left the skin on so they were quick and easy. Can of corn, just a simple can of corn, and one of our hoagie buns. We did one of those just to have some bread with this meal. So that's meal 1. Next, we're going to get started on meal 2. This is going to be our smoked sausage hoagie meal. So the first thing we want to do for meal 2 is to get our hard-boiled eggs cooking for the 7-layer salad. This is how to make perfect hard-boiled eggs. You put your eggs in cold water, make sure they're completely covered, put the lid on, bring them up to a good rolling boil, and then remove them from the heat and let them set for 10 minutes. So while our hard-boiled eggs are working, we're going to want to cook off some bacon so we can get that chopped. While those are cooking, we're going to get our sausages up to a boil and make our 7-layer salad. Now, on these smoked sausages, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a package of 4. So, I just went ahead and got the family size. It was like $1 more than the 6-pack. You probably, like I say, will definitely have leftovers on these. So just put in the water, however many you want to boil, and get those on the stove. Okay, so our hard-boiled eggs came up to a boil. We let them set for 10 minutes. Now we're going to drain out all the water. We're going to add in some ice. Add a little cold water in there. That'll cool them down quickly, and they'll be perfectly boiled. Next, we're going to work on our 7-layer salad. So I've got iceberg lettuce here. I'm just going to start with the head of the iceberg lettuce, and we also have, we have 7 ingredients. So we have frozen peas, cauliflower. Here, I can kind of show you the stuff. We got a cauliflower. We got our radishes. We got frozen peas, our hard-boiled eggs. Earlier, I cooked and chopped some bacon. You can do any mix of 7 ingredients that you want to make 7-layer salad. All right, so I've got a cup of mayonnaise in here. I'm just going to sprinkle a couple tablespoons of white sugar. And I always like to kind of thin mine down with just a touch of ranch dressing. That way it's not so thick and globby as just the mayonnaise. It adds just a little bit more flavor to it. So we're gonna mix that up and we're gonna reserve that for the top of our salad. Start with the iceberg on the bottom. I'm gonna lay in our cauliflower. I cut this, I just chopped it up into little florets. This is fresh cauliflower. And a crazy thing on this, went to buy the cauliflower and it was actually a little expensive this week. However, the organic cauliflower was cheaper. So, you know, if you ever have a problem with your pricing, you can always check the organic section. Occasionally, organic stuff's cheaper than the regular. These are frozen peas. You can let them thaw if you're eating this right away. If not, you can just put them on there frozen. They will thaw very quickly. We got our radishes. You can do this in any order as well that you want. Here we have the hard-boiled eggs that we boiled earlier. We're just going to get those peeled. Next, we're going to sprinkle our cheese, our crumbled cooked bacon. So basically, we're icing the top of our salad with mayonnaise, ranch, and sugar. For color, we're just going to sprinkle a few more peas on top and a little bit more cheese. Next, we're going to toast the bread for our sandwiches. And those will go in the oven. All right, so here's a nice, quick, easy meal. We've got our hot bun here. We've got our Polish or smoked sausages, whichever one you happen to find. Our delicious 7-layer salad. And just some store-bought potato chips. There you have it, meal 2. Now we're gonna continue on with meal 3. Baked chicken legs dressed with barbecue sauce. We're gonna serve that with baked beans and cauliflower with cheese sauce. I took my chicken legs, I got them for 96 cents a pound, and I marinated them in just some barbecue sauce and some poultry seasoning. I just put them in a bag too. That's nice to incorporate all the oil with the seasonings in there. And then I'm just gonna dump them out on a sheet pan. I'm gonna sprinkle them with some salt and pepper, and I'll bake them in the oven. All right, so now I'm getting ready to cook the cauliflower. While I was cutting the cauliflower for the 7-layer salad, I also made my florets for the cauliflower and cheese. I have here a boiling water. I'm gonna season it up with some salt and pepper. You wanna add a good amount of salt to the water. Vegetables, they need a little bit more salt to cook them in than like your pastas or your potatoes. However, cauliflower, it's a vegetable that doesn't have a whole lot of water in it, so you don't want to get too crazy on the salt with that. A lot of times, a lot of vegetables, you want it almost to taste like ocean water. We're going to scale it back just a little bit for the cauliflower because it is going to absorb so much water. Plus, it's also going to take a little bit longer time to cook. So whenever your vegetable takes a little bit longer to cook, you want to scale back a little bit on the salt. Another rule of thumb pretty much for vegetables is now your water's cooled down. When it comes back to a boil, let it simmer for about a minute and then your vegetable will be ready to take down. You don't want to overcook them. You don't want them to turn to mush. And we're going to make our cheese sauce in the same pan. And meanwhile, we can heat up a can of baked beans to serve with our chicken legs, which are baking in the oven as we speak. So here we are again at a rolling boil, so we're going to pull those off real quick. Okay, so we just pulled our cauliflower down. We're going to put our pan back on the stove. You know me by now, I like to conserve as many pans as possible. So I'm just going to put our half and half right in there. I'm going to bring that up to the boil. I'm going to add in the shredded cheese. We're gonna make our cheese sauce and we're gonna dump this right back in there. I'm gonna let it boil for just a smidgen. And then we're gonna whisk in the cheese. Go ahead and turn the heat off on that. In goes our cauliflower. We don't want to break that apart too much, so we'll just leave it like this for now. And then we'll toss it in the cheese sauce right before we plate it. We should have our chicken legs coming out of the oven right about now. Take your chicken and toss it in barbecue sauce. Once you get them all dredged in the barbecue sauce, just put it back in there to brown. Next, we're gonna serve up our nice, delicious baked chicken. Just came out of the oven. We got our cauliflower with cheese sauce here, our baked beans, and we're just gonna serve it with a piece or two of this delicious barbecue chicken. So that's meal 3, cauliflower and cheese, baked beans, and the baked barbecue chicken. So now we're gonna start meal 4. This is the Swedish meatballs. So we're gonna start by cooking our egg noodles. We're gonna do, again, some salt and pepper to give those noodles some flavor. And we're also gonna drizzle in a little bit of oil. We got some egg noodles here. We're gonna add those in. Next to that, I've got a pan getting hot here. I'm gonna saute our onions and our mushrooms in there. You don't have to put mushrooms in if you don't. I guess you don't have to put onions in if you don't want to either, but I like Swedish meatballs with onions, mushrooms, and peas at the end. The peas at the end. We're gonna add in our dried pasta here. Onions diced, we're gonna start by sweating those. A little salt and pepper. We're gonna give our pasta here probably about 7 minutes to cook, and I'll take that down. Meanwhile, we're just gonna be sweating out our vegetables. Here, we're gonna add in our mushrooms. Let those wilt down a little bit. You see our pasta is almost al dente. We don't wanna overcook this because it's going to continue to cook a little bit in our pasta sauce. Okay, so that is working nicely there. We're gonna get some butter in there. And we're gonna get that melting down just a smidgen. We're gonna add our flour in. So we're gonna get this all incorporated, and we're gonna deglaze it with our beef broth. And we're also gonna get some half and half in here, and we're gonna simmer it all nice and low for probably about 10-15 minutes to get that flour cooked out. Okay, so our sauce is simmered nicely here. Put a little bit of that in here. We have our meatballs here from the other day. We're just gonna dump that into the reserved pasta here. I just warmed them up in the microwave. So they've been in the refrigerator since we made them the other day. You can also sprinkle in some of your peas now. This is delicious with a little Asiago on the top. You want to just shred that in there. I'm gonna serve that with some bread just like we had the other day. We should have one of those hoagies left. Swedish meatballs, the garlic bread, and any leftover 7-layer salad you might have. So first we have meal 1 with the hamburger steaks with barbecue sauce, homemade mashed potatoes, just canned corn, and then the toasted bread. That's the same hoagie as we have here for our next meal, which are the smoked sausages or Polish sausages. And then that's gonna be served with our 7-layer salad. Has bacon, peas, cauliflower, radishes, cheddar cheese, hard-boiled eggs. So that's gonna be served with some potato chips. Meal 3, we have our baked barbecue chicken with cauliflower cheese, baked beans, and also just serve some potato chips with that. And then last but not least, like I said, my favorite, Swedish meatballs. Okay, and then that comes with the last piece of the hoagies. Also throw out the rest of that 7-layer salad to serve as a vegetable with the Swedish meatballs. All right, bin 4. Hope you enjoy it.